All right, so I think we were able to begin. Hello everyone, thank you for coming on this early Saturday morning. I'm Pieter-Jan Pauwels, and this is Thimo. We're on the bottom of the screen and probably on the second side, yes. I'm Pieter-Jan, I'm from the Open Knowledge Foundation. Open Knowledge Foundation is a non-profit organization based here in Ghent, and we try to gather communities that work around open data. And this is Thimo. Thimo, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Thimo. I used to be a Drupal developer a while back, but I'm probably considered a trader because I went to work for a local government. I work for the city of Ghent. This city? Does this work? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just have to keep the mic a bit clear. If you don't understand me, please put up your hand. It's early for me as well, so. So I work for the city of Ghent, which sounds pretty boring, but actually I get to work with more technical stuff and trying to open up the city's local data. I also work for the Flemish ICT organization or society, which tries to cover a lot of ICT issues that all the cities in Flanders are facing. So one of these issues is that we're trying to increasingly open up local government's data.
So yeah, so that's something we want to talk about. So I'm gonna very shortly and briefly go over what we're gonna tell you now. We're telling about open data and the economic value and how to turn that into a business. Because are there any startups in the room or people thinking about a startup? Okay, right, good, thank you for coming. So we're talking about open business models and what you can do with it and what are the opportunities to do something really valuable with it. Now, in the project we do, Apps for Europe, we are searching for good open source startups or people with a startup ID. And even this afternoon we'll have an How to Pitch session by Toon van Acht from data.be, which is a big KPO data bank, and he's an excellent speaker in pitching. We also have a business model co-creation session and a sort of tryout where we can see which business pitch suits you the most and is a good way to talk to an investor or an incubator or an accelerator to really sell your business idea. So, open data.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about open data. It's quite a hype word, at least. Well, it's a hype in my world, in the local government. Do you know what open data is? Right. So we've said the word a few times. Maybe it's good to explain. Basically, the European Commission decided that, well, and there has been a law before this, national law in Belgium, that all data owned by government is actually collected with taxpayers' money. And is actually a public asset, so this data should be released to the public as well. So public being you guys, especially like developers, can use this data to build interesting applications. But it's also a matter of transparency and being kind of honest about what government is doing with your money and stuff like that. So, what's the definition? It's kind of quite hard to define, but somebody made a website open definition anyway, and the most succinct statement they have is open data and content can be freely used, modified, and shared by anyone for any purpose. Any purpose that also means you can sell it, you can build a business with it, you can do all kinds of stuff to it. And if you give me the next slide, yeah. To make it easier, we normally break it down in three pillars. So you can only say as a government, yes, I'm doing open data when you actually do these three things. You should provide open access to your data, which means open access, yeah, well, it should be available on the internet. Okay, we can discuss whether or not that's easily accessible, but for most people, especially the ones in the room, I guess data on the internet is quite accessible. It should be for free without registration. You don't have to watch a 3-minute video in order to get the data and all this kind of stuff. Open formats mean basically that it's not released as a JPEG file or a PDF file or any kind of proprietary file which you can't easily read with code. So it's we're basically talking about XML or JSON or similar standards that are really easy to use in software. And an open license means that you can actually redistribute the data and make money with it. We normally refer to Creative Commons. Most popular, my favorite is CC0, but CC0 is actually the same as having no license, which means that data is in the public domain, which means you can do whatever with it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So why are we trying to sell you this whole open data ID? We're not the only ones. For example, Neelie Kroes from the European Commission also says that there's a lot of value in having data access and having open data as well. She says it's unlocking the gold mine. And if you want to understand what she means by that, she says there's 70 billion euros of economic value therein. If you do that in Belgian francs, that's 2 trillion. How many times can you say 2 trillion? Not a lot, especially in this economy. So it's something that has a lot of value according to the EU and a lot of authorities. But that's just Europe. If you look at McKinsey for America, they're talking about $3 to $5 trillion as well in these different sectors. And I think they even forgot some, because agriculture data is also a very interesting one. But before you get your hopes up and you want to get that 70 billion euros, it's not just about economic opportunities, it's also about government process optimization and cost reduction. By giving the data free, they have less costs and create value as well. But still, if you look at the objectives of open data, it's about more transparency of government, which is always a good thing. It's about improving public services, which is also a good thing, but it's still, the third pillar is still that economic value, and that's what we want to capture today with this presentation and with the workshop this afternoon. So this is an example. We do a lot of hackathons together with the city of Ghent, Apps for Ghent. Has anyone ever been to Apps for Ghent? Well, you should have. It's really a fun thing to do. It's only one afternoon. It's coding with people who are just citizens who develop in way other formats or have way other skills. This is one of the teams that participated last year with environmental data and sensor data. And for example, they made this application. It's an iPhone application called the Rokjesweer, and Rokjesweer is something that shows what weather it is outside, but instead of giving you just a number, it's 21 degrees Celsius, they give you a choice of clothes to show. So they use open sensor data and open weather data to make this application. But they didn't really want anything on the day itself, because the most of the time with hackathons, the most innovative application will win something and get a kind of prize money to start up the whole business. But it's not necessarily the one with the best business model that actually wins it, and that's something we try to overcome with our organization. So Rokjesweer could be a perfect one to sell to H&M, and we'll explain what the whole business model behind it could be on the end of the presentation. So even though there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of people entering in hackathons, it's sometimes very hard to put a business model to it, start a startup around it, and make it something really valuable. And that's too bad, because the EU is talking about that 70 billion euros that they want to get out of it, out of that economic value, but it's something that's still lacking. So that's why we're here. We're part of Apps for Europe. It's a project, it's a 2-year project, and we're in the final year. And our job is to turn data into business. What do we mean with turning data into business? We organize business launches, which are hackathons, but they're mostly about creating a business model rather than a proof of concept. And the thing we try to offer to the people entering the business launches is having a European support network. For example, we are with 19 partners in 10 different countries. And we try to provide tools to help people create sustainable business models around their open data ID. Our main product that we're trying to sell today is the International Business Lounge, where people like yourself can talk about your open data startup to a whole network of European investors, accelerators, incubators, and other open data experts at the Future Everything Festival, which is happening, I think, on the end of February 2015 in Manchester, UK. It's a festival about how technology can change art, can change science, can change everything, and the whole business plan is to invite good open data startups to Future Everything to really talk with these investors and get to know how they can really refine their open data business model. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Last year we had at least 3 finalists from Belgium, even though we're in a lot of countries. We had Nostalgio. Nostalgio was a cloud-based storytelling platform around old postcards that were online. And they took their postcards to put them in Google Street View to have walkmentaries to see the old life in the streets in your Google Street View. Rambla is all about open data, parking data, real life parking data, and have an application to really use it. I think you can all download it on Android and your iOS device. And data.be is the data bank full of company registration data as well. So if you want to hear about that later, come this afternoon. But now we need other open data startups to really go to Manchester themselves and really present their open data startup. So if you have a startup using open data, or you have an idea around using open data as a resource in a startup, let us know, and you can either join the online competition. It's just filling in a huge form with your business model, which is kind of boring. So we also have a local business launch in Belgium themselves, and that's way more fun because it's live and it's very fast. So it's at the Opening Up conference in Brussels next month. It's just a 5-minute pitch where you explain your open data startup ID. There's 5 minutes Q&A by the judges who are there, which are people from accelerators, incubators like iMind, iStart, and many others. And we try to find 5 teams to participate and see which one has the best open data startup idea. Even last year, the guys from Nostalgio actually won the Audience Award at the International Business Lounge in Manchester themselves. So we're very proud to have a Belgium winner that time. And that's why we want to do this session from this afternoon, because even smart citizens, we know you're excellent developers, but even smart citizens can use a good head start. And that's why we wanted to talk about open business models. That was the whole point for it. Why do we want a Belgian team to win again at the European Business Lounge? Is because this is a very important one. If we can prove that open data reuse, like having an application, having a startup, can create economic value, that means governments will publish more data. And that data can also be used again for creating more economic value and other startups working with other data. So that's very important for us. So open data business models, I'm gonna let that be talked about by Thimo.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it on this slide for a second because it's I love watching the stars. No, really, are you all developers, or because this is Drupalcamp, I expected a lot of Drupal developers, but I'm not sure. Do you all code? Who doesn't code? All right, good. Oh, so a few people. Okay, so we've mentioned open data and open data startups a lot, but you don't necessarily, well, even if the concept's not really clear, you'll probably realize that in order to have a functional website, app, product, whatever, it's always good to have a large database of stuff. You know, this stuff can either be stuff you get from your users, or it can be a database of stuff that's provided by the government. And we want to actually guide you to finding the right data for making your app. So if you have any kind of idea, you don't have to define yourself as being an open data startup per se. Just drop by and we'll talk about it, and we can see if there's any opportunity for you to come to Manchester or even other events we'll be doing in the future. So yeah, there is kind of a difference in the way you have to define your business model if you work with public data. Even though a lot of these things will probably be similar or be known by you guys. I mean, there's a lot of business models that you probably already know from others. So just very quickly, what is a business model? Yeah, well, it's basically how you capture monetary value. There's a lot of other value in doing stuff. Obviously, there's social value. Obviously, you want to do stuff that maybe improves the planet. But obviously, you also want to earn money because there's nothing worse than being in a startup and not being able to pay yourself any kind of wage for a few years, and then you basically just get poor and give up. So that's why we need to capture that monetary value anyway. It's also defined as the relationship between different participants in a commercial venture, the benefits and the costs, and so forth and so forth. It means that you're not the only one making money. If you have a good business, there's plenty of parties that are making money, and there's also people buying stuff from plenty of parties. Well, this is basically what it boils down to. Everybody can understand this. Your revenue minus your cost is what you gain and what you can, and you also have to add minus taxes actually, but yeah, the profits is what you get. Like you said, we're just scratching a very small, tiny little speck in the galaxy of business models. It's not strictly defined. There's no cookbook for business models. Every business is different. So we'll just see what is typical for open data business models. And this slide is very interesting because this is Toon van Acht. He has a really good business model. He's a really good speaker, and his first slide, obviously, his business plans are bullshit. It's kind of true, but then again, we like to think of a business model as the brain of your company. So it's kind of important to think about how you're going to make money, even if you're not defining it according to the hundreds of books that were written about how to make business work. So big three business models that are typical for open data. You'll probably know this one. This one isn't necessarily typical for open data. There's a lot of software using a freemium model. It's kind of obvious. There's a number of features. If you pay no money, you get one of the features. If you pay more and more money, you get more and more features. It's often used in a software as a service kind of environment, SaaS, and it resembles the guys selling packs of cigarettes at the school gate. So you get something for free, and then you need more, and then you have to pay for it. This one is semi-open source friendly. You probably know there's a number of software products that are kind of open source. But when you want to get to the more difficult or interesting features, then you end up with a code base that isn't open source anymore. But it's obviously a good one and it works. I'm not going to go through all of these. These are features that you could add in a freemium model. Typically, you'll just do what you do, but do it better for those that pay. So they will be able to have, for example, an unconstrained number of API calls. It's the example of Google Maps, actually. You'll be able to do more sophisticated querying, all this kind of stuff. If you're working with open data specifically, the bottom one is interesting because a lot of people are opening up more data over time. And as a company working with data, you might be able to provide early access to new kinds of data are coming around in this kind of model. And it's flexible because there's different ways of trying to sell it. You can have a subscription model. You can basically say if you use this feature one time, you'll pay this amount. You can have a recurring model, or you can have a usage model, even just letting people pay for the number of API calls or even the number of bytes they send over the line. So there's plenty of different ways to shape this. A few examples. This is a great one. Enigma is basically a search engine for public data, so it lets you, it's American, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it lets you search all kinds of public records about companies, organizations, government data. And you can get the basic solution, this one, on their website for free, but they provide better products if you pay. This one I thought was personally quite interesting. This one kind of calculates how good your field is doing. If you're in agriculture, are there farmers? There's no farmers here, but anyway, if you're a farmer, this is a very interesting software, and I think it's quite successful as well. You can get the basic version for free, but as soon as you want to have more complicated analytics and stuff like that, you have to buy one of their software suites.
And even if you're not a farmer, it's good to be a software developer for things like this, because I said agriculture was something interesting to work on with open data, because the Climate Corporation recently was sold for $950 million cash. So it's just people mixing up some open data, making something interesting about it, and selling it for a quite big amount. Say so myself.
Yeah, that brings us to an interesting topic. One of the reasons the 70 billion, or was it 70 billion?
Yeah.
Is important for Europe is because we're not really making stuff anymore. You know, we have a very small agricultural sector, and we don't have big industries creating microchips and so forth. So the European Commission had the idea that maybe we can sell our brains, or actually our knowledge, our data. You know, this is one of the things Europe should be working on in order to stay relevant in the world. Okay, second business model. This is the SLA model. An SLA is a service level agreement. A lot of companies use this model in a way that they basically sell services to open source software. So if you're a coder and a tinkerer, you can install the software for yourself. But if you're, for example, if you're a government, you probably want a company to host it for you and to provide you with a certain service level agreement in order to be sure that you'll have X uptime, or so many nines of uptime, and you'll have custom add-ons, you'll have integrations. In some cases it's similar to the freemium model, but mostly it's about software that you should install yourself, having a company provide you with guarantees that it's working properly. This is a very interesting example from Beldenstedt. That you talk about it?
Yeah, or even Peter can talk about it because he was a co-founder. But anyway,
he just woke up.
Yeah, and he just woke up about it. So the data tank is something started from the Open Knowledge Foundation, and it's an HTTP API thingy that where you can input a CSV file, and it comes out as a JSON or an XML file. So it's machine readable data that comes out of it. And the whole thing about the Open Data Tank is open source, so you can find it and use it and fork it on GitHub. But we also have a few people, the We Open Data guys, and they provide custom add-ons, and they provide hosted services or consultancy if necessary for governments using the data tank to publish their data. So it's a very good Belgium example for how SLA model can actually be used in an open source friendly way for Belgium startups.
Yeah, you'll probably wonder what do I need to do with software that converts a CSV to JSON? Well, it's actually used by the city of Ghent in order to publish open data. So this is typically a kind of software that is doing really well with local governments that are trying to set up a data portal to publish their data in different formats, because as a government you mostly store it in very weird formats that nobody can use, and thanks to this kind of tool you can make it kind of developer friendly. The next example, I think, the Open Bank project. Yeah, I don't know this one either really.
The Open Bank project is a sort of app store. It's an API that the Open Bank project provides to other banks, and with that API you can make third-party apps which are secure enough to use, because of course for a bank it's a lot of privacy issues and a lot of security issues that come with having third-party apps built on their services. So the Open Bank project is also an open source API that you can use to the full extent, but to have a bank integrated, they also provide consultancy, also provide custom add-ons. If they don't know how to create a third-party app, they'll do it as well based on the Open Bank project. So again, it's about the added value that you sell, but the core still remains open source.
Right. I'm gonna hurry a bit through the next ones because I see we have 20 minutes left, and I also want to provide Peter with a chance to do his pitch. Now he woke up. So this one is a typical open data model in the sense that it's a kind of a marketplace model where you connect the publishers of the data with people that are interested in using it. Data.be, the guy you'll see this afternoon, Toon van Acht, is a genius in this. We have Le Moniteur Belge. Who knows this kind of thing? Belgisch Staatsblad. Do you know this? That's where all the records of all the companies in Belgium are published. It's all in PDF, and it's a site built in, I don't know, 1831 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very hard to search, and it's very hard to find information about companies. This guy parsed it all, did some text recognition on it, put it in a decent database, and now you can search it, you can query it, you can find, but he'll tell all about it this afternoon. So an example here is Carambla. You know, there's parking spaces on the one hand. There's people having, you know, like private parking spaces, but they're not there, or they're, you know, they want to rent their parking space. And then you have, especially in Ghent, you have a humongous, like segment of society that doesn't find a place to put his car, especially not on weekends, in Ghent. This is a similar example from the UK, is it?
Yeah, this is like ImoWeb, but the smart ImoWeb. So there's still a service that provides a place to put your house up for sale and have people looking at the houses. But what these guys do is add open data to it about the neighborhood, about the sell prices in the neighborhood. So it's like a smart ImoWeb that really shows you that whether is this house perfect for me? Is it too expensive? Is it the neighborhood I'm looking for? Are there local schools that that would fit my kids? So all that data, geodata that is interesting in buying a house is combined with the platform they offer.
Yeah. So if you want to buy a house in England, Zoopla is your place to be. These ones I will really rush through them because we have too little time. Like I said, if you want to provide a relevant service, it's mostly interesting in besides having a nice app or something. It's interesting to have some kind of data or something, you know, database of relevant data. You can either buy data, you can get it from governments, or you can crowdsource it. And this is a kind of the model you could use to collect lots of data. You can have a community which can use your data without restrictions or fees. And you could have, on the other hand, you can have people crowdsourcing the data in order to be able to create applications. Multi-product model. This reminds me of Adobe and Microsoft Office. You know, like you have a few products that are free, but then the more interesting ones that connect to all the others, of course, are closed, and you have to pay for them. The freelance agency model. I don't know. This is obviously an agency model. Is very interesting. This is kind of I know this Drupal guy who abandoned Drupal. He's called Tim Leitens, and he now has an agency and is making lots of apps, iOS apps with open data. And I think he's doing well. I don't know if he's here today, but we should ask him. So he works with companies and governments, and he also participates in hackathons and does the more fun parts of working with open data. This is his company, Appreciate. Like you can see, it's a digital bureau with open data expertise. And then the white label model, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, this is the one I talked about before. So if you have an application that uses open data that you yourself don't want to maintain, but it's something very interesting to sell to other people like governments, if you have the KBO data bank and you want to make something fun with it, you can sell it to governments. Or for the first example, for the Rocky Suite, this is something that you can go to the H&M, to the Zara, to whatever clothing store. There's so many in Ghent as well, and say, hey, I can make this app for you for this amount, and have it totally branded for your own clothing brand. So the guys from Rocky Suite didn't do that, but still there was a lot of market potential in just making one app on one hackathon afternoon. Another good example, if you want some inspiration, is OpenData500.com. It, for example, shows which company categories exist for bits, lifestyle, real estate, energy, and where they get their data from which department in the US. So that's also an interesting. But why are we here? And that's what we want to show. This is you guys. You're developers. So developers might think, yeah, we're not the business guys, we don't do business development. But when we go to hackathons, we mostly see that developers truly have amazing open data ideas, and we would really want to stimulate guys like you working around open source to think about sustainable business models around open data, because that are the people we really need for a project like Apps for Europe. So if you want to go further in that, the session from Toon van Acht is this afternoon. He'll pitch his own idea and he'll tell you how to pitch as well. We'll have a co-creation session where we'll work together to see how to create a decent business model around your idea. And we'll have some business tryouts, because that's a good way to see how an investor thinks and how you should react to an investor and vice versa. So it will be a quite interesting session this afternoon, and it will give you a nice head start if you want to participate in local business lounge in December later this year. So and now I want to give the time to Pieter to talk about Flat Turtle. It's one of the good open data application that are in Belgium, and he'll talk why this screen is so important.
Hello everyone. The fact that I'm actually, does this actually work?
Yeah,
Okay, you have to go really close. Okay,
really close.
good. The fact that I'm actually standing here and not one of my colleagues is because they're in New York at this moment. They're pitching this for the New York market. So, but I'll try to explain why we started in Brussels. Because if you walk in Brussels, you cannot walk one street without at least one office being empty. So it's not least. This is really bad for Brussels, because a lot of buildings are empty, and yeah, people just don't want to buy their office spaces. So a lot of tenants are really in a difficult situation there. So how can we actually make this better? Well, how do you make the difference between if there's like if you're doing a visit of some buildings and you decide whether you want to take a building, then you always get like this fancy guy in a nice tux who's coming along with you and say, well, this is the building, it's still accessible, and you can come through this street, and then you can come in the office, and then you can go up the first floor, and there's that company, and then the second floor, that's that company. Well, we're actually building a tool for that kind of people, to actually make their life easier, and just not only for their life, but afterwards. Once you decided that you actually take the building, then you can still be in contact with your house lord. So this is a screen which shows you really accessibility information about where does bus stop, when does my train stop, does my train have in Brussels, of course, if there's a delay. There's a lot of delays, so it's useful that you know that. We also have the bicycles, we have the weather, we have all kinds of data that we put on there, and we also connect data streams from the building itself. So we have like the data about the energy, we have data about who is on which floor, and so on and so forth. So we take all this data, we put it on a screen, and we offer it towards office buildings. And this sells not as many as we have wanted in Brussels, but I'm sure it will sell a lot in New York. So this was kind of my pitch. It's a long time since I've done it, but I hope that you are interested enough to actually believe that I've built a viable business. I just want to say something about everything I've heard of Pieter-Jan and Thimo, and that's when you're building a business, and we really want to make you build businesses around open data. Then first forget about open data. First just try to build a product that matters for someone, and then try to see whether open data can actually be beneficial for your business. And that's what I think is really important. For us, we have when we pitch this to investors, we've never mentioned open data, but if we are going to the public, we say, hey, we use a lot of open data, and this is really important for our product.
Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And if you're interested in business modeling and how to create one yourself for your open data startup or your idea, just come along this afternoon and we'll have a few good sessions. So are there any questions from the audience itself? Okay, that's fine. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you again sometime here at Drupalcamp Kent. Thank you.